In this video in our international security series, I'm talking to an old friend of mine, Matthew Trott. I've known him since we was in the military together over 30 years ago now. We discussed about his time in the police in the UK and the way policing is going in the UK, the positives and the negatives. And in fact, he's done 22 years in the British police. He's in a good position to be able to give good insights. So enjoy the video.
All right, today I'm talking to an old friend of mine, Mr. Matthew Trott. How long I know you now, Trotsky?
Since probably about 1990, 91. So long time. It's about 33 years.
I think 89.
89, you reckon?
We left Ireland in 91.
Yeah, what was it reckon? Anyway, yeah, it would have been Ireland, wasn't it? 89, 90.
There's like over 30 years.
Yeah.
Cool. Tell me now, you just done your book. What's your book about?
Okay, my book's called Hard Stop. I've used a pen name of Jack Daw for that. Just a thin veil of anonymity. It wouldn't take people too much effort to find out who I am.
Well, you're here now, so everybody knows who you are. You just told them.
Exactly. It's not no big secret. So Hard Stop. It's a memoir of things that have happened in my life. As I've got in the book, it's a journey of crime, violence, and deception. Obviously, my early years in the military, then leading up to becoming a police officer in a bit busy inner city, then moving on to becoming an undercover police officer who's buying drugs from criminal gangs. The reason I did this, I was had a lot of time off work with an injury, and it gave me time to do this project. And it was quite cathartic. It sort of got a lot of stuff off my chest from my past and things like that, and it enabled me to put down into a book my past, sort of a mark in history, but also like books we've read in the past, like Legionnaire and Papillon. I wanted it to maybe be a bit of a guide for somebody who's looking to go into that career, or just wants a kick up the arse to sort of think I could do something special with my life rather than just the normal day-to-day stuff.
I don't know, you might know more about this than me. These days, do you think people could get away with the stuff we got away with? And we can't tell them when we
no chance. I don't know. I mean, I live in an area where kids still go out and play. Teenagers hang about in gangs and things like that. Like basically we did in the army, we just hung about in gangs as teenagers into our early 20s and did stupid stuff. I think the problem nowadays is everything's on camera. You can't walk up the street without a camera, or somebody flipping their phone out when you're doing something stupid. I mean, if some of the stuff we used to get up to was on camera, we'd be screwed, mate. But I mean,
not that we've done anything wrong. Everything was all legit.
Yeah, no, right? We did nothing, mate. We did nothing. We were good boys. But if you fast forward that to my police career, in the early years, there was less CCTV cameras. Police officers didn't wear body cameras, and you know, the primary aim of the police force is to fight crime, and that's what we went out and did. We weren't bothered about people looking at us and what we were doing, as in if we were doing anything wrong, because we were out there actually fighting crime. And yeah, things got a bit rough, but it was a scale of escalation, which if the suspect puts something in our way, we'll escalate it as well. So
yeah, but that's the thing. I think you're looking at stuff from my experience of dealing with things. If you're dealing with bad guys, you can't be nice. And I think this is this part of the stupidity, which we'll talk about later. Everybody's giving all these scumbags the benefit of the doubt. They've got rights where they go out and cause chaos, but as soon as anybody lays a finger on them, you're in the wrong. So how can you run a system like that? You can't.
I think you'll find still now a real criminal, a proper scrapper, a thief, a burglar, a robber. If they get arrested and they fail, they know they're going to get some force used on them, and they accept that. That's your real criminals. But if you look at your protesters and your gobshites who are always gobbing off online and things like that, people like that, yeah, they're your problem. You know, your social justice warriors, if you like. they're your problem. That, or people who are having neighbourhood disputes, and you tell them, no, we can't do that. You know, they want you to sort of go and arrest their neighbours for not being nice to them. Well, we can't do that. We need a crime. And as soon as you say no to them, and they're straight up there, straight to complaints, they want to complain about everything, about your attitude, you know. So that sort of things happens. But real criminals, or even some of your football fans, people like that, they don't mind getting a bit of rough and tumble because they just expect it. It's part of it. It's part of it, exactly.
I remember years ago, you mentioning that, I worked at some dodgy, not dodgy, some underground punk club in London, right? Camden Town.
Yeah.
And whenever we got the hardcore punks turn up, they wanted to get slapped around. That was part of their night out.
It's part of the night out. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's part of the night out to get beaten up.
Give me pain.
By the bouncer. Okay, cool. Good night out. I don't know. I think people's changed. I don't deal too much with younger people. I live in my own world. I think the world changed to from when we were growing up considerably.
So younger people, I mean, I want to touch on that because obviously I'm a father of a 24-year-old and a 19-year-old, and people talk about the snowflake generation, things like that. Some of them, and some of the officers I've worked with in the past, are quite robust people who will still get stuck in and they want to do the right thing. The problems I've had with it is, again, if we go back to that neighbourhood dispute type thing, people in their 40s, 50s and 60s, and this is police officers as well, act a hell of a lot more entitled than some of the younger people, because they feel, I suppose they feel they've earned the right to, but it's that sort of, I'm entitled to this, if you don't do this, I'm going to play the mental health card, or I'm going to you know, complain about you. It's that Karen effect, if you like.
What do you think now, just to summarize your police career, what was the best part? What was the worst part? What was the best and worst? Okay,
so in all, I did 22 years. Career started in the West Midlands Police, where I did, I think it was about 9 years there. Then I transferred over to Leicestershire Police as a sergeant. I did a number of different supervisory roles there. Best part, I would say, was it's hard to say a best part because there's so many good bits in the early years. You know, being a street cop in Wolverhampton was fantastic. Whichever way you turned, it was a target-rich environment. If you didn't go out on a shift and arrest somebody, or have a foot chase, or have a helicopter, you know, to chase people down, you weren't doing your job. It was just such a target-rich environment, and that was great for a young cop to learn your skills. Having done that, I progressed on to working as what was called a test purchase officer. Test purchase officers dress as a drug user, so it's heroin perhaps. You would dress up in rough clothing, put mud on you, a bit of tuna oil to smell. You go out on the streets, go around to areas where you know there are drug dealers, get served up drugs, record the evidence, have surveillance teams recording the evidence. You know, identify who they are. You do a number of different purchases, and hopefully you'd build up the echelon of local dealers, because usually you start with a smackhead who sells you a bag, and then they introduce you to someone else, they introduce you to someone else, and you build up that profile. But that was very rewarding, because you feel like you're doing something special, and I think we all like that little feeling of we've done something different to a daily 9 to 5, getting in the car and going to work and back.
And the negatives?
Negatives, I think my worst times was possibly as a supervisor. Supervising people is horrible. Again, with police officers, they're very clever people. And yeah, again, they must be humans. As soon as you say no to them, they'll turn on you. You could be the best sergeant in the world, running a great team. Somebody's feeling a bit vulnerable, or they're having problems going on in their own life. And this is one way I got through it, was not to take it personally. You could be the best sergeant in the world. You try and sort their life out for them, because they usually come to you for that. And you put something in place that they don't like, they'll turn on you, they'll take notes on you, write down about what you've just said and things like that. and the day before you were doing everything to save their life and their career. And it's literally they're like a snapping dog. They don't know what they're doing.
That's people, mate. I think that's people in general.
But you've got to learn not to take it personally. And then the next day you can be holding their hand when they go into a meeting with professional standards. You know, it's really weird. And, you know, after that, they'll snap at you again. And it's like having kids.
All right. You know, I'm a little bit of an anti-authority type person.
No, not you.
Sometimes. Mate, why is it why do cops have such, again, it's worse in the US than it is in the UK. I've always said to you, cops in the UK are generally good, a lot better than US cops. And for people listening, I've always said the cops in UK would be the feds in the US. Your upper echelons of security guards would be your regular, be it state, city, municipality cops in the US. Why is it cops have such a stinking attitude with people? And I've experienced this too much, including UK. Why the attitude problem?
Sometimes you reflect the attitude that you're being given from the member of the public, which isn't a great thing. I've always worked on the basis, even with criminals, all the way to people who are quite violent, is just to be polite. You know, you can be polite whilst putting someone in an armlock. You know what I mean? You can use force and be polite. As you know, you've worked the doors, you've worked security, and you know how it is that you don't have to be horrible to people when you're doing stuff. But what you generally find, let's look at, let's use an example, cop in his 40s, got a bad back, been doing shifts back to back up to 12 hours per shift, got crap going on at home, got his boss giving him more crap, like that. They go out in the streets, they're human beings at the end of the day. And if they have that already going on, even, I mean, one of my teams, I was supervising at 10 people who had mental health issues ongoing. So you've got all that building up in the background. You go out in the street, say, pull someone over in a car, start talking to them, and then you get that. Ain't you got anything better to be doing, mate? Can't you go around catching criminals? There's that kind of attitude that you get from members of the public, which I understand, especially if you've done nothing wrong. You just get going about your life. But I think when you're hit with that, or if somebody's violent, unreasonable, again, when you say no to them, they become unreasonable. You get that, then straight away your guard is up. It's a very combative sort of process. So if you are dealing with people in a combative status, especially in America, where every car you stop virtually is an armed stop, which is quite rare in the UK. If you that stress levels, that cortisol or whatever it is that goes through your body at that level, you're constantly hitting that all day. Every time you stop a car, it's going to have an effect on you.
The funny thing is, if you get pulled over in, say, the urban areas, Miami, etc., it's like the cops are generally, they're wary of guns. Because I was always armed, 90% of the time plus. And the thing is, you go to the country areas and you're pulled over by the cops and they take for granted everybody's armed. They don't care.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, it's a lot different. I think in the US, the cops are trained to be afraid. And I think you see it in I'm not going to get into the politics on a lot of the shootings in US. I don't think a lot of them are racially motivated. I think the cops are afraid and they're trained to be afraid.
Yeah.
Whereas to me, one of the worst things you can have in that type of situation is people that are afraid, because they're going to panic. And that's why I think a lot of people end up shot, because the cops panic. They don't have the confidence to deal with those situations.
But I've always said, if you're going into a combative situation, you're not slightly afraid. You're either mad or stupid. You know, you've got to understand. I mean, we've spoke about this before. You'll get a soldier who joins the military, goes away on a tour somewhere, does 6 months, yeah. Then a year later they leave. They don't ever go anywhere again. And next thing you know, they've got PTSD, they've got mental health problems, etc., etc. And yeah, in combat, they've probably seen quite some bad stuff. Some of them don't. Some of them stay in camp. You know, there's tours vary. Whereas you look at a police officer, say 20, 30-year career, virtually every day of that career, they go into a combative situation. And it might not be bullets flying like in the military and people getting blown up or being mortared, but it's combative, then same levels are going into your body, that same fear is going into your body. So it has that effect on the human being, and it breaks them down year on year. And that's why you get so many bitter cops as they get older.
I think I said to you years ago, I think it was you, and we were both out of the military then. I think you were just going into the police, or you could have been in the police, and we were talking about some of the people we knew in the military. I think I said to you then, or you said to me or something, those guys had never done anything.
Yeah.
You were seeing more, being a cop, you were seeing more aggravation. And again, even before then, when you worked security, again, you saw more aggravation on a daily basis dealing with people than you stood. You mean this was pre-Afghan and Iraq? And I said back then, it's like you stand more chance of being stabbed and screwed up being a cop or doing commercial security than you do being in the military.
Yeah,
because you're dealing with scumbags on a daily basis.
At that time, I'd done 3 tours in Northern Ireland. I'd done Bosnia, come out, done retail security, and that, you know, as a guard and as they called it back in the day, the store detective. And then joined the police. I mean, we probably didn't even realise it was happening in Ireland, because we had aggro, we had stress, we had tiredness, all the triggers for getting that PTSD type stuff, and people died, you know. But it just didn't seem to register. It was more of a slow burn into us than that actual everyday combative sort of situation. So being the store detective, running out, arresting people for nicking a pair of pants, but yeah, somebody would stab you for that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, literally. This is where, and again, going on about the security guards, you see what's happening now. A lot of security guards, I think they're underpaid to start with, especially the store cops. There was something out of, I think, a McDonald's down in London somewhere, and some guy nearly got cut up by some kids. And it's like, okay, these guys are dealing with a lot of BS on a daily basis, but nobody cares, you know what I mean? But
mate, you could not pay me enough money to be a security guard at McDonald's at night time. No way.
There was one company I used to work for. They had some good venues. They used to do a lot of black tie work. But their roughest venue, I think, was something like Kentucky Fried Chicken in Leicester Square.
Yeah.
And that was the most dodgiest place they had. They had some clubs and bars and everything else, but that was the most dangerous place they had, because the guys there, I think they used to recruit mainly rugby players, rugby league players. And every Friday, Saturday night, there's always problems. Cops are called.
Mate, I mean, nowadays, you've been out of the UK for a while. I know you came back a little while back, but you go into a place like fast food restaurant like McDonald's on a Saturday night, and it's chaos. It's like Gladiator Academy. It's absolutely savage. And I mean, I wouldn't do it anyway, but there's not enough money in the world for me to deal with them little shits.
I wouldn't have the patience these days. I gave you an example before we started recording about a cop. I told you I was doing something years ago. This was at a very nice venue in London, Cafe Royal. And it was I think it was Blair was turning up, some event. And the story goes, I was up on one of the floors, the meeting room floor, just waiting. And up turns some cop, uniform cop. He looked like a complete sack, right? I don't think his shoes, if I remember, his shoes didn't look like they've been polished. His pants never looked like they've been ironed. And he barked at me, told me something, oh, you need to do what you're told and all the rest of it. And I was like, who are you? You know what I mean? This is 5-star. He barked at some of the other staff. I was like, in those days, I was like, I'm tolerating this. Went down, saw the guy that was running the job and said, who's this guy? You mean, if this is, you don't need me, there's a cop upstairs, I'm going. And I'm like, what the fuck? Whoops, sorry. What's going on? So one of Blair's people was there, and they went upstairs and kicked this cop out because he should have been outside doing the, making sure the parking spaces are free. So again, that goes back to attitude. And in 5-star, he shouldn't have had that attitude to start with. Well, apparently he shouldn't have been in the building. But I saw then, and I've seen this now. I've seen it the last time I was in UK. How come cops these days got so scruffy? Because back in the day, especially with City of London police and all the rest of it, they were like regimental.
Yeah.
That guy was dressed like a sack. I've seen, when I flew into UK, they done an immigration check before you go to immigration. And again, the border, what do you call them there? Border police or something?
Yeah, UK Border Force, yeah.
Border Force, they were dressed like they're all trying to do the Rambo stuff. They've got their combat pants on and boots, but okay, they've never touched an iron before.
Yeah, yeah.
Why is that changed?
So when I joined back in 1999, it used to be white shirts, pressed trousers, shiny boots, tie. You know, you'd have your epaulets, you'd have your helmet, that sort of thing. You know, and yeah, you look very smart. Always wear a tie to a fight, was the saying. You know what I mean? And it looked good when you all turned up looking smart. As soon as things started, the helmet would tumble off down the street, become somebody's trophy for the night. You know, shirts would easily get ripped. The trousers were itchy and scratchy, could only be dry cleaned. So we had to have dry cleaning vouchers and things like that. Then the dawn of stab vests came along for us. So stab vests were going over these white cotton shirts. So they were getting all creased up anyway and horrible. Ties then disregarded because you were too tight in the neck because of all the body armor and everything. Some people were using the flat caps, you know, remember the old peak caps instead of helmets. So there was a mix of headgear going on as well. And everyone was crying out for practical military style workwear, okay, which was fire resistant, suitable to be worn under body armor, and, you know, a bit more comfortable, I suppose. So bit by bit that started coming in. There was new uniforms brought in. They looked really quite good, but unfortunately, because people have been so used to shirt and tie and things like that, the members of the public, it started dipping a bit. And the good thing about the shirts that they had, very similar to this sort of top, which you didn't need to iron them. There was no need. The material just dropped out anyway. It was like a wicking material. The trousers came along and they were like a combat trouser with a sewn in crease. So people would just give a light iron. So you didn't need to have those razor sharp creases that previously we had. And the hats, oh, this is a more recent development, is the hats. We got baseball caps, okay? Very practical. You go to Europe, you go to Spain and Greece and places like that, and you see the cops, they dress exactly like that, but they look smart. They have a bit of pride about their presentation, and their BMI actually fits their body size. So unfortunately, the British police has got quite a few large people in it, poor diet, shift work, etc., etc. But you dress somebody in the equipment I've just described, and they look like they should be serving fries from behind the counter, you know, in a fast food restaurant. That's part of the problem, that they don't keep fit enough, and their uniform doesn't fit very well because of it. But then you've got supervisory standards as well. So if one of my team came in and they had dirty boots on, I'd throw in boot polish out my drawer. I always had it in my drawer. Get your boots clean before you go out in the streets. Then, I mean, I remember one guy, he came into work one day and his boots were falling off his feet. He had holes in his boots. I was like, what's that all about? And he says, well, I'm broke. He says, I haven't got any money. I'm trying to pay this mortgage. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. So I know it's a bit of a brag, but so I just went on Amazon, bought him a pair of 25 quid boots, and they turned up for work for him the next day. And he was like, he couldn't believe it. I was like, yeah, but I cannot let you go out in the streets looking like that, because the police don't issue boots. The only time they issue boots is for public order training. Public order, sorry, not training. So they'll be like steel boots, steel toe caps, and protected soles and fire resistant stuff. But if you're not a PSU officer, you won't get given them. You won't want to wear them every day anyway. So this guy went off with fresh new boots. Anyway, but if your supervisor isn't gripping you and saying, why are your trousers dirty? Why haven't you ironed that? Because you can still iron the trousers and look smart. There's no tailoring goes on either. Whereas back in the day, your trousers used to get a bit of tailoring so they fit you properly. Now you get a one size fits all. So unfortunately for the ladies, they get men's trousers a lot of the time. So the cut on them isn't right for them. So that's why they don't look right enough.
Do you agree that presentation, especially with policing, has got a lot to do with it?
I think presentation's got lots to do with everything. If you look the part, people respect you as the part. You can walk into a room looking 90% cop and people stop and take notice. If you walk in looking like a bag of shit, people will look, what a disgrace, and just turn their back on you. They're not interested in.
Mate, this is the thing with those border force guys, and it's like, I was like, well, you got a guy there who's scruffy, he's got an attitude, he's slouching. It's like, okay, and it's back down to, you know, I'm not regimental, I never was, but it's like you got people getting off a plane, okay, welcome to England, and you got these slobs.
Yeah, I've seen some good ones as well. I know a guy who works in border force, and I know for a fact he's ex-woofer actually. He's very smart all the time, looks after himself, but that is down to attitude and training. But again, if you've got poor supervisory, you've been working in that airport for the last 12 hours overnight, you know, things slip, don't they? Things slip.
Back now, what do you think the big problem is with UK and policing? Because everybody's complaining about the police, right? Crime's going up. You see it, the crime is literally going up. There's a lot more crime in UK. Why? What's the problem? Why aren't the police doing their job? Or are they doing their job, but there's not enough cops? What's the problem?
There's definitely not enough cops because of the cuts we had a number of years ago with successive prime ministers and governments. But as they've cut the cops, they've increased demand. So back in the day when we were youngsters, or when I first joined, when I first joined the police, we'd deal with street robberies, burglaries, car theft. You'd have a car chase, that sort of stuff would be going on. But very rarely you would be dealing with anything internet based. It was still in its infancy. Whereas now you're dealing with a lot more sexual offences, and that's not because there's more sexual offences. That's because people are more confident in reporting them. There's always been sexual offences. There's the social stuff as well. Again, like I said, neighbours falling out with each other, which builds into your neighbourhood policing or your community policing has increased. So there's an expectation of police officers engaging in community. You've got the internet stuff that I just spoke about. You don't need to rob a bank anymore. You don't need to rob someone in the street. Just get them to send a naked picture of them to you and then ask them for 250 quid, and you're getting the 250 quid. That you don't need to do that knife point robbery, you know. So it opens up a whole world of, you know, internet grooming, paedophiles, stuff like that, that would have been encapsulated in a small area. So if you had that dodgy bloke in the village that everyone would keep the kids away from, yeah, that guy's got an international reach now. So, you know, it opens a whole different raft of demand on less resources and a higher public expectation of those things that can get dealt with. So if you've got agreed times to get investigations done, if that doesn't happen, you could end up with getting a complaint or a disciplinary. You know, so there's reduced numbers, increased demand, and higher public expectations, which are partly driven by the media, if not wholly driven by the media. So senior officers are knee-jerk into public opinion and media opinion, which aren't always the same thing. Media opinion is probably quite loud and only represents about 5% of the people. But it's a squeaky door that gets oiled, isn't it?
Do you think the senior management of the cops now are more, rather than doing their job, rather than going out and going after criminals, they're really, they're more, how can we put it? They're afraid of public opinion. They're afraid of media opinion rather than going out and slamming up the bad guys.
I think when you go into the upper echelons of the organisations, any organisation, I suppose, once you, as a police officer, once you get past sergeant, you start hitting inspector and above, you become a politician. Without a doubt, you have to be able to be a politician. You have to make a step change from being that thief taker to dealing with people of influence. So some people They know how to play the game. They'll do what they have to do politically, but they'll continue their drive to fight crime. And you'll usually find they won't really get past the rank of inspector or chief inspector at push unless they're really lucky or connected. Whereas you'll have other people who, you have people turn up on your shift and you go, he or she's a bit different. They've got allegiances and friends in different aspects of the force, and they'll get promoted very quickly. They'll get postings to become a detective very quickly. They'll get postings to very interesting jobs that other people don't really even know exist. And then next thing you know, they're a chief inspector, and yeah, they are purely a political wheel. Everything they do is politically based around maybe an organization they belong to, or if they are looking at further promotion of the ladder. Everything, always in the media, always spinning out the latest emperor's clothes that people have to say is amazing. And most of the time it's just noise, virtue signaling and distractions.
Do you think that's good for the police or bad?
I think there has to be a balance. I think you need to have a balance. Again, the British police, they police with consent. If you don't bring the community with you, look at the Brixton riots, things like that. We can't go back to them old days. You have to have a balance. You have to have understanding what's going on in the community. A lot of the time, though, they're engaging with the engaged. So I saw a local police force had put on, they were doing an event about stop search at a local place of worship, I think it was in East Leicester. They invited anybody who wants to come along and talk to us about stop search. The only people who are going to turn up to that are local community leaders and people like, they call it the crime watch, the local neighbourhood watch people. I will be very surprised if you get a couple of the street urchins turning up, the ones that carry knives and drugs that are going to be stop searched, or the kids that are being mugged by them people. They're not interested in that. So obviously my suggestion was that they should do an internet-based one, like adverts on Facebook and things, because they're engaging with the engaged. But it's very important that we do still have that community engagement.
Do you think the police have gone soft?
I think the world's gone soft. Well, UK's gone soft. I think no longer will people accept what we used to get up to, quite rightly in some cases. But that goes back to one of your first questions that you asked before about public expectations of how they're dealt with and attitude tests and things like that. Really, doesn't it? It sort of crosses over.
But it's back down to, I think a lot of people, I see this in other areas, in other parts of the world, where people are happy for the police to be hard as long as there's low crime. And I think to have, the criminals have to fear. And this is, I think, you see with the knife gangs in London and everything else and all the other kiddie crime in UK, there's nothing there for them to fear. They don't fear going to prison. Whereas in the day, if they knew they're going to get caught by somebody and get a beating, then they're going to fear something. Back when I was a kid, I think they still had, you got caned at school, you had birching, there was corporal punishment. So again, it's like, if there's nothing there for people to fear, then they can do what they want. And I think this is a problem, not just with the UK, I see it in other countries. It's like, there has to be a balance. Like you say, the cops, I forget which US president said it, walk quietly but carry a big stick.
Yeah.
Without that, go on.
If you go, one of the sayings we used to be told was the public treat the police like bin men. Yeah, they want you to take the rubbish out, but they don't want to see you doing it. Okay, and they don't want to hear you doing it. And they don't want you to block the roads whilst they're doing it. So as soon the public are happy for cops to lock up as many people as you like until it inconveniences them. The minute it inconveniences them, or their darling son, daughter is the suspect, they hate you. Yeah, they don't support you at that point. A lot of that's frustration, human nature, blah blah blah. But that's how it's always been. It's nothing new. As soon as you inconvenience them, then you're the enemy. One of the biggest problems, I've said it already, is the media. Okay, there's been a massive campaign over the last few years with the defunding of the police, the lowering of numbers, that you go in the newspapers or online now. I don't buy newspapers, but you go online now, everything is anti-cop, anti-cop,
Yeah.
anti-cop.
You see it in a lot of places. You see in the US.
But it's a political political media storm, because it makes good reading. People want to hear it, and it breaks that and erodes that trust and confidence that people have in the police. Because I know for a fact the cops go out every single day, putting their lives at risk and doing some really good work, but that never gets reported. Never gets reported.
You see all the places in US where it's defund the police, crime's gone through the roof.
Yeah.
Crime is going up big time in the US because, okay, yeah, US cops, again, they're not that well trained for the most. There's some very, very good people. But again, in general, you ask me, they're not that well trained. But again, they're dealing with a lot of BS, but in all the areas they've cut the police, crime's gone through the roof.
It will do.
So again, then people are complaining, well, where's the police? Why is crime gone up? Well, if you cut the cops, then what do you expect? But that, like you say, there has to be a balance.
And you put their demand in a different area. So we don't want you out cracking heads, as we used to call it. We want you to go to this fair today and walk around there, you know, or this latest virtue signal parade that we want you to go.
There's how many videos out there of cops dancing and all this stuff at this, like, they make them look stupid. But I think you need to have respect. If there's no respect, then that's where the problems come from. There has to be respect for the police, etc., and the system.
Again, part of these things you see at the Pride events, at other stuff like Carnival and things like that, it's that community engagement, which I can't totally say is rubbish. You need a certain amount of community engagement. There needs to be an element of drawing the line and saying, I'm not dancing with you, mate. I mean, you look at the, what's the one in London called, the Carnival there?
Is it Notting Hill?
Notting Hill, whatever, whichever one. Female police officers were being sexually assaulted.
And they got away with it.
And they got away with it. That's horrendous. And I mean, to be fair, but it's easy for me to say, he should have filled his face full of cactus spray and locked him up. But you do that, you'd have caused a riot. And that's the line. People don't understand the line. You know, if we stepped out of the Nottingham Carnival and things like that, the stabbings would go through the roof, because the communities fight between themselves, never mind the police. They hate each other more than the police. So what are you supposed to do in that?
It says a lot where you say there, the example of female cops being sexually assaulted and nothing happened. It's like, well, there has to be a line drawn somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there was an investigation afterwards and they used CCTV or identified anybody, but at that point, that time, it was, to be fair, cops do this sometimes, is we're going to do nothing now, we're going to come back later. Because if we do it now, the response will be London will burn. Yeah,
but that's the thing. There needs to be a response. I haven't seen any follow-ups to that. But again, to me,
it could be that the news headline was female police officer gets sexually assaulted, and then further down the line, when it shows they've done something positive about it, they're like, "Oh, we're interested in that. We just wanted the headline."
I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy days, if you ask me. Where do you think the UK is heading as far as crime is concerned?
Crime. I think we have a centre line, and we just dip and dive across that centre line like a mean average all the time. And you've got different things that will affect it, and it's the different types of crime. So I would say financially, a lot of people are struggling. So you'll get a lot more low-level crime, theft, things like that. People bypassing electricity meters, perhaps, like in the old days. Well, you know, the people trying to get by. I don't think the UK will ever be as bad as the old days. Again, street robberies all the time and things like that. They happen, but once they happen, the police usually jump on them. It's a different world now, mate. Honestly, it's frauds and things like that. Online crime.
What do you think the biggest problem is going to be? What do you think the emerging crime
online
sector are? Online,
honestly, everything is going that way. High-tech crime units are growing. The forensics of computers. You know, I mean, it's important for people in the security industry to sort of get some skills in that. really is, because online paedophiles, online frauds, everything is just coming through all the time. There is other crime, there's your basic normal street crime, but you get that in any part of the world, in any big city. You know, that's just your normal day-to-day business, but online for anything, really.
And to finish up, last question, what do you think of the UK police? Is it going to be getting better or getting worse the way it's going, or what? Is it going to be?
I think at the moment, sorry?
Is it in for a positive or negative future?
I think it'll always be the same. You can't win as a cop. You should know that. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. But at the moment, there's a massive appetite for change. People have had enough of the wokeness. The politicians have started to listen to that. And they've gauged public opinion. And as you were saying earlier, people are sick to death of taking the knee, or their cops just not looking like cops. You know, you've hit a number of different things on this interview about that. And new chief constables have been put in place that are vowing to fight crime, not to virtue signal. And there's been some good responses to that. And that's what people want.
I think people want that. People, I think, you know what? I don't think people are particularly worried about some bad guy, as long as they are a bad guy, as long as the cops are right, getting the slapping. It's what they deserve. Yeah. And I think you said earlier, most criminals are like, okay, I'm a criminal. But I think you see, especially with these kiddie gangs, I think most of them need a spanking more than anything else. In
they need some positive role models in their lives.
Yeah, I think, you know, some of the places I deal with, those kids would be rounded up and literally spanked in public and don't do it again. That's it.
Yeah.
But I think it's sad to see what's happening. I think this wokeness is just screwing the world up big time.
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on a number of different subjects, so some of the things we've spoken about are probably quite mixed up, because each one of your questions could be an interview in themselves. But you look at the kids that we're talking about, and what's their problem? Breakdown of families, or they've never had a dad around. You know, dad was a local gangster when they were born, so they develop into the local gangster themselves. The mums are barely a child themselves, and no supervision whatsoever. So the streets bring them up, and that's how they live. You know, they can't afford new trainers, so I'm having your trainers, mate. Yeah, it's how it goes, isn't it?
I think it's back down to there has to be respect. I'm not big for the system, if we call it, but there has to be respect. There has to be, how can I put it, values. You know where I am at the moment, and it's like there's no crime. Crime doesn't happen because the people know if they commit a crime, if they do something stupid, they're going to get a beating, and then the police will turn up, and then they'll get another beating because they understand the values. You know what I mean? And I think this is it. Looking especially in Western Europe and US, values is gone.
Well, you have whole estate. You have whole estates where the values balance is totally out. You know, Scotland's estate in Wolverhampton I used to work on. I can show you some videos. I think you saw them a few months back where they attacked a police car and everything. There's going to be good families. There's going to be good people trying to get by. Ultimately, most of the people there just living, their kids living in their houses, popping out other kids and living on benefits, and there's no standards there. I bet when that estate was first built, it was lovely. You know, allotments being used by old people and all sorts of stuff, but generation after generation of drugs and degrading public standards has caused it just to be a bit of a no-go zone for anybody who doesn't live there. You know?
I think it's down to places like that people have to move in, and this is where the police, again, I know it's my way of thinking, the cops have to be hard to go in and just clean the place up. But again, as you said, if you moved in there and cleaned the place up, then the media would be crying human rights, this and everything else. But I don't know, crazy days. Anything to say to finish up?
No, I'm all good, thanks, mate. I've enjoyed the interview. And
cheers for talking, and I'm sure we'll talk again at some point in the near future about something. All right?
Amazing.
So congratulations on the book. I know it took you a while to do, but glad it's out there, and it's in bookshops as well, right?
It's in bookshops, it's on Amazon. As normal, Amazon's probably the best place to get it from. It's cheapest on there and it gets you quicker. Get it on audiobook as well, which I quite enjoyed making. I didn't do the voice, you'll be glad to hear. And it's also available on an ebook.
You want to talk about your first aid training?
Sorry?
Want to talk about your first aid stuff?
If you want to, mate.
So you what are you offering?
It's still recording, isn't it?
Yes, recording.
So I've got a company called Jackdaw Training and Protective Services. The main push on that is first aid training. It's all your health and safety level stuff in the UK. I do a number of law enforcement agencies and factories and places like that, just to keep everyone's skills up to date. I'm hoping to move into the area of FREC 3 soon, but at the moment I'm just ticking over doing first aid training for people if anyone's interested.
So people need to find you for first aid training. Your book's on Amazon and first aid, they can find you via LinkedIn, right?
You can find me via LinkedIn or Google Jackdaw First Aid Training in the UK, and something should pop up.
And you're not Jackdaw, are you?
Hey?
You're not Jackdaw.
I'm not Jackdaw.
No, all right. All right, mate. I'll talk to you later, all right?
All right, see you later, mate.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with my old friend, Matt Trott. If you want his book, it's on Amazon, Jackdaw Hard Stop. And again, you can reach out to him for first aid training if you're in UK or outside of UK. And again, he's got the experience to teach what works and just not what he's been taught on a course by other people. So he understands reality, which is more than most. So you can expect more videos from me in the future. There's a few more interviews coming up, and also follow us along on social media for more of our content on close protection, kidnap, ransom, etc., etc., etc. Be good, stay safe, stay out of trouble, and if you can't be good, do not get caught.